Okay, I guess we'll kick things off. I think we've got a few people in here now. Welcome to How to Train Smarter, a conversation with 3 MUAC elite distance runners. Before we begin, I'd just like to start by acknowledging that I'm connecting in from Wurundjeri country. I pay respects to elders past and present and recognise that sovereignty has never been ceded. And I'd also just like to acknowledge the First Nations of the country on which you are all connecting in from. Cool. So like I said, this is How to Train Smarter, a conversation with 3 MUAC elite distance runners. My name is Ellie. If you don't know me, I am one of the coaches of the Melbourne Uni Development Squad, along with Dan. Dan, do you want to wave? Maybe they'll see you from gallery view. I'm also an athlete with the club. I'm going to get our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves in a moment, but before I do that, I just want to briefly run through how the session is going to run tonight. So Dan and I, as your hosts, are going to ask the panelists a few questions that we've got prepared, and then at the end we're going to move into a Q&A. So we're really inviting questions from all of you guys. There, if you look down the bottom of your screens, there should be a Q&A button. If you click that, that's where you enter your questions. And then at the end, Dan and I will take turns reading them out. I'd also like to welcome you to use the chat function. I can see already we've got some nice comments from people. That's awesome. Keep them coming through. Please feel free to comment and reflect. If you have your own little tips that are relevant, like pop them in. If you have any questions about like a word that someone's using that you don't understand, chuck that in the chat and either we'll attend to it or someone else from the audience might answer. Cool. I think I've covered all of the things I need to introduce. So like I said, I'll hand over to the panelists. Let's go in order of surname alphabetically. So we'll have Rosie, Isaac, and then Zaka. Please introduce yourselves and take your time.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to see all these participants today, and I'm really pumped to be here. So I've been, I think, a member on and off, mostly on, for about 11 years, but 8 of those I was in the US, but I still have a very strong attachment to the club, and hopefully at the end of this year, we'll restart racing with MUAC. But at the moment, I'm studying law at Monash. I'm working part-time as a law clerk, and I'm also coaching cross-country and athletics at Wesley College, which is a private high school in Melbourne. I've been fairly serious with my running since probably year 9, so maybe 14 or 15 years old. And so it's been a solid 12, 13 years of taking my running pretty seriously and prioritizing it as one of the main things I'm focusing on in my life. And in the last 2 years, I've probably had the most interruptions with sort of COVID and a couple of injuries. But as I said, I'm really looking forward to being really a lot more involved with the club later this year, hopefully getting back into some racing. And I think this discussion, you know, even though I've been running a long time, it's just as relevant for me now as it was when I started. So I think we can all learn a lot from each other today.
Thanks, Rosie. Hey, I'm Isaac. I am a middle distance runner with the club, and more recently been a committee member with a few else here present. I joined Melbourne Uni Athletics Club when I started university in 2016, and I'm still a student. And you'll find me running around the tracks sometimes. I have had a tendency in the past to be a bit of a medical marvel and having lots of injuries that aren't your typical running injury, which I think has been a learning experience, but also maybe question why I'm a presenter today. I'm also interested to hear from not only everyone else here with their faces, but through the questions as well, because I think one thing about running is, well, any sport or any pursuit really, is that you have to find your individual success. And I think for myself, through injuries and competing, from primary school cross country through to world championships, you learn a lot about what works for you. And also appreciating that what works for someone else, you don't have to be jealous of or think that will work for you. On to Zaka.
Thanks, Isaac. And yeah, very excited to be here as well. It's great to have so many participants, and I think we're all going to learn a lot. Yeah, I've been with Melbourne Uni Athletics Club for the past 10 years, but I guess running's been part of my life for a good part of 20 years. I'm showing my age there, but I actually didn't run as a junior or in little athletics, which some athletes sort of start when they're a lot younger. I started when I was 16, 17. And then, yeah, I sort of moved my way through the ranks in school cross country and started to take it a bit more serious, moving into more of a club environment. And I guess I've learned a lot over my journey in terms of being under various coaches, which I'm definitely learning. I'm still learning as I coach now also, but throughout my journey as a runner, I've sort of gone through the highs and lows and the roller coaster that is running, and gone through injuries, and learn a lot through, I guess, trial and error as well. And I think we do learn as runners constantly about our bodies, and from, I guess, being open-minded and meeting other runners and other ways of learning how to train. And I think now I've, fast forward, I guess, from that 16, 17-year-old, running's become a huge part of my life. It's, I've made lifelong friends. I had tremendous opportunities I went over to college for a few years. I have raced in Japan, had multiple marathons over there, the odd marathon vacation with the Chicago and London marathons. And then, yeah, so I guess my journey in running, it's continued as I get older. I just love it just as much as when I started. So I'm excited to talk more about running.
Awesome. Thanks to all of you. I think if it wasn't already abundantly clear from reading your bios in the event description, that it's super exciting to have three such accomplished athletes in the virtual room with us today. And I think it's also really nice to hear for a lot of our kind of beginner runners in the audience that, even at the elite level, like, people still deal with injuries and still deal with different challenges all throughout the process, and that we can really share on that journey. I've got one question that I'd like to ask each of you before we move into the fundamentals of distance training. Zaka touched on this a little bit, but outside of competition and performance, what does running mean to you? Maybe we'll start with Isaac.
I think for me, unlike Zaka, running has been something I've done for such a long time. Like, I can't remember a period when I wasn't running, unless it's more so like a injury period, because I just did the school cross country through the levels, and then eventually started training properly, I suppose. And then I would run my way to different cities around Australia, which was quite fun as a teenager. But now I think what running means to me has changed a lot as I've aged. I think when I was younger, it was just, I'd go to school and then I'd go and run in the evenings and run on the weekends and compete. And it was quite a social thing. And now it's a social thing, but also like a balancing life thing. And I found that at times I run my best when I am balancing things better and I have a bit more routine. And running, I can, go to bed, plan when my run's going to be. And if I wake up and have a run to start the day, it's a good way to start the day and clear my mind before I go and do whatever else I have to do. So it's certainly just something that I guess is, inexplicably in my day-to-day life, whether it be running with a friend, jogging around Princess Park, or competing at nationals, which also means it depends on the time of year. Like during winter, sometimes it's like, I don't want to run it in 3 degrees. So try and run with my housemates or my friends just to keep that motivation up. And then if it's in January, it's, going to try and smash these sessions because I have more objective goals and performance goals. So it's many things.
Yeah, I guess I'm following on from that, Isaac. I mean, for me, running it's a real connector. I mean, it helps me connect with people. So I touched on it earlier. I've made lifelong friends, but just in terms of that human contact and, you know, that level. And in other ways, throughout the course of a week where there's different runs, it can be a way that I can have time by myself and be out there in nature and just completely switch off. And I think lockdowns taught us a lot about, you know, having a lot of screen time and not just, you know, a lot of the uncertainties that we've been faced with. And I think running's been a real constant in my life, and being able to just get out the door and just, you know, forget about everything and go for a run, try and solve the world's problems. But yeah, I mean, and then on other days throughout a course of the week, you know, on a session day, it is, there can be a goal around pushing my limits and really, you know, teaching me about resilience and driving towards those goals. So yeah, throughout the course of a week, running really changes for me also. Like it's grounding in that sense, but yeah, and it's cheesy, but I think this saying a lot of people say about never regretting that run, you know, and you always come back and you feel better for it. So yeah, running means a lot to me in a lot of ways.
Well, I don't know what else I can say, but I definitely think like I'm a naturally competitive person, and I got into running, and I think I stick with running because it gives me that competitive outlet, and it's just really nice to have those goals to work towards. You can map them out, and then when you achieve them, I mean, even if you don't achieve them, just the process of working towards a goal is really satisfying. And I don't think it's something that you can get always with work or other parts of your life. So it's just nice having that sort of area where you have control, and it's like, I'm going to push myself and I'm going to try to get the best out of myself. And yeah, it's just really fulfilling. But I think, like Isaac was saying, running for me at the moment is more sort of like that meditation, sort of stress relief, being where, you know, you have a lot on your plate, and it's that time when you can just get everything to quiet down in your mind. But then other times it's like I might be feeling really scattered and all over the place, and it's actually the time that I can focus, and I finish the run and I'm like, okay, that's actually not that big of a problem. Like I can solve this, you know, like it's just that sort of sense of peace that I don't think I've gotten from any other sort of exercise or anything else. Like when I'm injured, I'm, you know, swimming and cycling and stuff, but I just never get that same feeling I get from running. And then also the social outlet thing, like, I mean, I'm a pretty introverted person, and I definitely I definitely took it for granted that like all of my friends were running friends for the most part. And then like, you know, with lockdown and stuff, and you can't see those people, and it's like, oh, hang on, like this is actually really lonely. And so yeah, just having those social connections. And I think as runners, we're all sort of similar. I mean, everyone's different, but similar in that you know, we all want to push ourselves and work towards goals, and we can all connect on that and relate to each other on that. So it's just, I think you really find those people that understand you more than anyone else through running, for sure.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you all. Yeah, I really like that idea that running is so many different things to you. And like Zaka said, it's so many different things to you, even in the 1 week, which is pretty cool. And I definitely feel lucky at the moment that our sport, running, is legal and we can actually do it, because it's certainly getting us through from a mental health perspective. Cool. All right. I'm going to throw it over to Dan, who's going to get into our first theme for the night. Yeah, off you go, Dan.
Thanks for that, Ellie. And also thanks to all of our wonderful panelists for getting us started and coming along tonight. So the first theme of tonight will be the fundamentals of training smart. So, you know, that's the sort of the name of the whole webinar that we've got going on here. It's all about training smart. So I guess a good place to start would be to ask each of the panelists, how exactly would you define training smart? Like, what does it mean to train smart for each of you? I guess we'll go alphabetically again. So, oh, sorry, Rosie, you just went, but maybe I'll pick on you again.
That's okay. So for me, I think it's taken me a long time to figure this out. I think smart ultimately, from my perspective, means sort of really prioritizing your long-term, I guess, health and happiness over any sort of short-term gratification, whether it's like running a certain race or a session, even though you think, oh, I'm not feeling great today, I'm a bit run down, which, you know, you could end up, injuring yourself or getting sick or something. And so it's just really being able to think about long-term goals and long-term ramifications, what you're doing. Another really big thing that I've learned is ultimately consistency is going to win out. So having long stretches of consistent training, even if you're only running 4 or 5 days a week, that's better than, hammering yourself and then having to take months off. So just that consistency. There's no like shortcuts, I don't think, in running. There's no quick fixes. So really just keeping that in the back of your mind, and not freaking out like, oh, I've only done, one of the sessions I was supposed to do this week. Like, that's okay. Like, you'll be fine. And just generally being patient. And I guess that ties in with what I've just said, just trusting in the process, trusting that, the results will come. And I think when you're a newer runner, you have a really steep sort of improvement trajectory, and then you can sort of plateau and you're like, well, what's going on? And I think when you've gone through it before, you realize, well, that's completely normal. And actually all that time when you're just building consistent training, that's all going to pay off. Yeah, sure, you're not, doing a PB every time you race, but doing all of that consistently good training and racing will lead to sort of a big breakthrough. And everyone has peaks and valleys, and it's just learning to recognize that. And I think one of the other big things that I've learned is having a bit of a mentality of just kind of like, just keep showing up. So there's going to be sessions or days when you run and you feel great, and you feel like you really, crushed that session, or like you're feeling really confident about that upcoming race that you have. And there might be another day when you can barely hit the times that you wanted to hit, or the pace just feels really hard, or just something feels wrong. And I think just realizing the fact that you showed up and you tried is fantastic, and it's going to pay off. And, on that day, like just the fact that you did it is amazing. And I think just being okay with that, because you can't feel great every day, and you can't, win, so to speak, every single session that you do. I guess they're the main things that I've sort of picked up over the years, and I've found have really helped me when I've sort of been like beating myself up about, oh, that wasn't a great session, or, this past week I've been really busy and I haven't done all the runs I was supposed to do. Just keeping all of those things in mind.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac, over to you.
For me, I think the notion of SMART is at the intersection of the coach and the athlete, acknowledging that not everybody maybe has a coach, but for me, I think that is a necessary thing. And the reason I say that is because I think there needs to be kind of cohesion between what the coach wants the athlete to do and what their philosophy is for performance or for whatever the goal may be, and that the athlete thinks that is going to work for them, and that's something they are willing, I guess, to buy into. And the reason I think this is so important is because I suppose in my history as being, I guess, some would say like a prodigious junior talent, at times I would, be running really well and then just hammer myself and finish every single session on the ground at this track and think that's what I had to do to perform, when in reality, if I kind of took kind of a step back and a hands-off approach and just, actually listened and ran the times I ran, not 5 seconds faster every repetition, I might have, rather than having fleeting success, have long-term progressive success. And that's something I've learned over the past, I'm 24 now, so probably the past 3 years or so. It's been my fastest time, I was 19. And it's still something that when I start running well again, coming back from injury or illness, I have to tell myself, just as Rosie said, that was one session. It doesn't matter, it was a little bit fast. Also, it doesn't matter that it was amazingly good, because that's not a race. And that's not where I'm trying to outperform other people and beat my best performances myself. And I think, we're all runners. We know the community. It takes someone crazy to want to go out for, a 40-minute run, let alone a 2-hour run. So I think the biggest thing is SMART is actually really being conservative, and it's really hard for us to be conservative as runners. So there has to be someone, something, or yourself and some means of doing that to make yourself be conservative. And for me, it's become very much, I do a run, I quickly write a note to my coach of how I was how it was. Most of the time it's like good tick, no pain, hopefully. And then I just forget about the run and go and do something else the rest of the day. And that will then comes down to hopefully that long-term consistency and, you know, achieving the pursuits of your goals.
Fantastic. Zaka.
I'll just quickly add on from Isaac, and Rosie's covered it off beautifully with all that info. But just on that, yeah, not being attached to sessions and getting attached to every run as to like, you know, I've got to absolutely nail it. Or I think, you know, and Rosie mentioned it about patience. I mean, and it'll be a theme that I know I'm going to talk about. It'll probably come up from all the rest of the panelists, that, you know, it is a long game and it's about consistency. And, you know, I'd sort of talk about week on week, month on month, year on year, as opposed to just one super session in a week and, you know, you're away, and that's all you need to do. It's all the other runs that, you know, that consolidate over the course of the week, and then another week. And also just being happy where, you know, not every run's going to feel amazing, but being comfortable with that. And so know that you're going through that progress, you know, of building for a race and the highs and lows that come with that, and just making sure that, yeah, you don't get too attached to these sessions, keep sort of moving forward. I like the way Isaac just says, yeah, it comes back, yeah, tick box, yes or no, and, you know, and then you get another chance. Like I always say to my athletes, and if they get a little bit frustrated on a Tuesday with a workout, well, you've got another opportunity on Saturday or Friday, Thursday, or the next workout, and then again and again. So there's always other opportunities.
But if you're injured or sick, you don't get another chance.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for that, everyone. So moving on now, what would be a key piece of advice you'd give a newbie runner to set them up for success?
I would just maybe from a practical standpoint, getting into the right shoes to start with. And Isaac can help you from the running company at Yarraville. But no, getting fitted, that is a good, you know, I know some people just start and just go with it and then start having issues just from that basic standpoint. But there's a few other things like getting into knowing, you know, obviously if you can get into an environment where there is someone conducting a proper warm downs, some drills and things like that, that's ideal. But yeah, being guided by a coach does help in that instance. But yeah, it's pretty important to get those basic fundamentals. And in terms of just how you approach your running, from respecting your body and allowing it to recover rather than trying to run hard every day. And I think that's a bit of a trap when you get excited. You start running and you just, maybe you want to run around the block and run every single day. You do the same loop and you want to run faster. It's not obviously sustainable. So getting the fundamentals of training down pat and learning about the hard, easy, I think we'll go into it a bit later about some of those key principles. But yeah, I think being patient and yeah, logging those Ks slowly to start with definitely helps.
The only other thing I would say is never underestimate the power of a walk jog. So a lot of people I talk to who want to start running, they just try to run 5 or 6 Ks straight and they're like, oh, that was horrible. It really hurt. I couldn't breathe. Well, yes, because your body is like, what are you doing to me? So, you know, even coming back from injury, I often start out with walk jogging, and it's just such a much more sustainable way to get into it. Your body gets used to the load. You're less likely to have shin splints and other things like that can happen. So yeah, and I think it just goes back to being conservative and thinking about the long game.
Yeah, I would echo what has been said. I think the primary protective factor for injury is load management, and that comes back to being smart and conservative. And I suppose if you started a new hobby or whatever it may be for you, or you have 12 weeks to run a marathon, you want to go and do as much as possible. And we see always so frequently that people feel great for 4 weeks and they're seeing very rapid exponential progression. And then in 6 weeks, they can't run at all because they're sore and they can't run the event. So it's, yeah, and I think you want to be running if you're enjoying it. and there's merit to running slow, whether it be a walk, jog, or just going for a jog where you chat with your friends, that there is training benefit to that as well. You just may not feel like it at the time. And I think for me, when I'm coming back from injury, I'm walk jogging as well. I try and avoid seeing what other people are doing or what I used to do, because I go, wow, there's no way I'm ever going to be as good as I used to be. Or how's that person training like that? So I like to kind of go in the shadows for quite a while.
Dark Strava.
All right, fantastic. So this next question, we've sort of already touched a little bit on this, so you guys may just want to briefly repeat some of the things you've already said, or maybe elaborate a bit more. But like, let's say you're talking to a runner who isn't really happy with their rate of progress and feels that they either want to like stop running, that it's just not working for them, or they really want to push themselves harder to start seeing like the gains that they're sort of hoping for. How would you approach that sort of situation?
Zaka, what do you
I would
come across
say
with the people you coach? Yeah.
Yeah, look, it is quite common that this does come up, and I think it's important to look at some of the factors that are firstly affecting the progress. So maybe just having a look at the program and saying, okay, what are we doing? What are the strengths and weaknesses? How can we focus on them? Maybe you need to develop more endurance, so we might need to build in some longer runs. Maybe you need to work on some speed work. So I think having a look at some of the factors that are causing this, and it could be that you're just running too hard on the easy days, and you just need to back things off, and you're in the grey zone. That might be something that you could sort of help with. The other thing is a change of environment and the goals, and just having a look, like just maybe looking at, well, maybe I need to focus on a different event, and I can go out for a bit longer and focus my energy on, rather than sort of banging your head against a brick wall. If you're not enjoying it, you've got to enjoy running. You've got to enjoy getting out the door. And if it feels like a chore, you really are going to get stale. But yeah, I mean, it's just important to also realize it's not linear running. Before, you can't just do more Ks and get better. There's going to be, we've all fallen into the trap that you do more, you're going to get a better result. It just, less is more often the case for running. So I think that's another area you could look at, is just maybe tweaking how much mileage you're doing and getting that enjoyment out of maybe changing up the environment.
I think this one's really tricky because our sport is so objective and the results are very, very tangible. And like 20 kicks in a football match where you lose by 10 points is not the same as 15 kicks and you win by 10 goals. Whereas in running, it's like a 17-minute 5K is a 7-minute 5K at parkrun every week. So it's, you know how you're going at all times if you want to know, and you know how other people are going as well. But it's such a personal thing, and it sounds so trivial, but it's like, well, I think the option in the question was, do you quit or train harder? Potentially neither, but you probably keep training if you have goals. And I think if people are, performance minded or goal centered, they will want to keep trying, but potentially have to resist or relinquish the opportunity to train more or train harder. You see people ask around the running community, people take 7-8 years before they run a PB. They change distances. Sinead Diver runs super fast in her 40s. The path differs for every person significantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is just, and this is where having a coach can be really great, because they can help you think about things objectively. They can, be that third party that's just come in and can just see things a little bit differently. And I would say just having a coach who's willing to try new things with you, whether it's a new type of session or like Zaka was saying, like just altering the mileage, or, maybe your body's just in like an overtraining mode and you need to take an extra day off and swim or not do anything. And the other big thing, and I had this experience when I was in high school where I'd sort of maxed out my potential with the group that I was running with, because I was faster than everyone and I wasn't pushing myself anymore because no one was pushing me. And so just thinking about, okay, who can I run with that's just a little bit better than me and can help me sort of take that next step. And it's amazing how you can surprise yourself when you have, faster people to chase.
And I think there's some other things too, like check your iron, how much are you sleeping,
Yeah.
what's your work-life balance like? It's not always just running.
Yeah. And that's where communicating with your coach, and then, having an open conversation, and it could be outside stresses that are affecting your performances rather than what you're actually doing running wise.
Or you can buy a carbon plated super shoe for a lot of money, and that will increase your performance without trying.
at the running company, Yarraville.
Right, those were all fantastic answers. Just before we move on to the next question, there's a comment in the Q&A sort of chat that I just like to read out because it kind of again relates to this, and it talks about how taking into account the load that a runner is taking on in the rest of their life, like how much work they're doing, other things that are going on in their life. All of this can affect your performance. There's running is like tightly connected to your body, obviously, that there's a whole lot of things that can affect it. So it can really pay to step back and take a look at other things that are not just directly related to how many Ks I'm running, how many sessions am I doing, what are my times, and all of that.
Yeah, I definitely, just in my own experience, like I feel like my life stress sort of manifests itself physiologically, and it really does. Like when you have stress in your life, your cortisol levels are going to go up, and it's going to, your immune system is going to start getting affected. There's so many little things that happen inside your body when you have increased levels of stress, whether it's, study or work or your personal life, or you're just not getting enough sleep or whatever it is. And so I think that's something I've had to learn the hard way too, is, and I know this is getting onto a little bit of a different theme, but, if there's like sort of like a voice in your head that's telling you that you don't feel good, probably shouldn't be doing that session that day, you have a lot going on, but you are constantly fighting that voice and just being like, oh, I have to push through no matter what, it's going to backfire eventually. I've had this experience, so I know. I guess it's just that listening to that little voice that's saying, you know what, I actually should probably just run easy today, or I should just take the day off because I'm seriously feeling burnt out, or whatever it is. So yeah, just what you were saying, Dan, that life can get in the way sometimes. And as we were saying, like sometimes running is that escape and it's that outlet, but other times it's what can push you over the edge. So just kind of treading that fine line. It can be tricky, and you're probably going to learn the hard way. I think we all do. But yeah, just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, really great stuff. Isaac or Zach, you got anything else you'd like to add to that before we move on?
I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Fantastic. So next up, we've got so if a runner only has a limited amount of time for training, like they've got a very busy life on otherwise, but they still really enjoy running. They want to, get a little bit better at it, and they just like it. How would you best recommend they sort of spend their time, like doing long runs, track sessions, fartleks? What sort of specific stuff would you recommend?
I think it is pretty broad. It's dependent on the event that they're actually training for. So that would probably determine where you would, I guess, focus your energy on those session days, because I think it's really important to, like, the long run for me is always, and I'm coming from a marathon background, so I always find that is super important for any program and the foundation of a program. But Isaac will probably disagree when he's talking about 1500s. But even if you say looking at a 5K, 10K, I think you can get a lot of bang for your buck with fartleks for people that are time poor, and it's something you can kind of go on effort and not get too carried away with having to set paces. You can kind of go by perceived effort. So I find that's a good one. Pickup runs, or progression runs. they can be sort of incorporated sort of if you're a bit time poor, because you can do it all in one, and you can vary the paces. And then, I think also incorporating some cross training in there as well, if they want to look at building the aerobic base as well. That's something that they want to do and enjoy doing.
I strongly dislike fartlek training. It's not at all my strength, but I do agree it is something that you could do. I know 45 minutes of running in 45 minutes and have included a warm up, a cool down, and like be really, really tired if that's the goal. I think if you're training for any track events, you might have a session that may total 2 to 3 to 4 kilometers, but take an hour and a half to complete because you have a lot, harder efforts, longer recoveries. So I certainly find that if I do a tempo run that might be 20 to 30 minutes, it takes less than a proper track session. But that is a hard question to answer without knowing the individual's goal. If they're trying to run a half marathon, you might focus on a long run, but I would say, in Australia, it's just like the thing to long run on Sundays. But if this person, I know, works on a Sunday, you just got to find the day that suits you. You don't have to follow what everyone else does. I've had a coach in the past who did not believe in long runs. He said, you have to race for 3.5 minutes. Why would you run for an hour and a half? And now I have a coach who I run for an hour and a half. So again, for me, it's like, sure, I'll just buy in. You tell me why and I'll buy into that. But I also, I do it on a Sunday because it works for me. So I think I would, if I only had time for one workout a week, I'd probably go and do a tempo run, because I can wake up, run to how I feel. If it's really cold and I'm feeling really tired, I just run to a 6 out of 10 effort. I don't have to look at my watch, cool down, get in the shower and go to work or whatever. I really like quite less objective workouts. And you come home and you feel like you're pretty tired, and that was the goal you looked for. And yeah.
Fantastic. So if that's all we've got on that one, so the last question for this first theme is sort of more to do with cross training. So I guess first of all, like, what is your opinion on cross training? Do you think it's a really valuable tool in the the runner's belt? Like, it can really lead to some big gains, or do you think it's just a bit of a waste of time and you'd be better off just spending that effort running?
I have so many mixed opinions on cross training.
Same here.
So I think that if you're injured, and if it's something that's going to help keep you just feeling sane and feeling healthy, then go for it. But I think that's really easy to get into the trap of cross training for the sake of cross training, because you feel like, oh, I have to do this amount of exercise every day and I can't run today, so I'm going to go do it on the bike, or I'm going to do it in the pool. And I've had periods like when I was in the college system in the US where, when you were injured, you were sent to the gym and you were either biking or you were sent to the pool and you're in the pool, and it just became such a chore. And so now my relationship with cross training is very different, and it's something I do because it should be like a relaxing, enjoyable thing. So when I'm healthy, I might swim or get on the bike once a week, and it's just a time when I just zone out and I just do something different. But when I'm injured, with this past injury, I was cross training pretty well for the first couple of months of it, and then it was dragging on and I wasn't really getting any results or any more information about what my injury was. And I just sort of felt like I needed to take a step back, because mentally I was just beating myself up and feeling like, oh, I have to do this every day. And then you just feel miserable. So I think it's just very dependent on the person and the situation. But I guess my bottom line is, if it's something that is going to help you feel better, and you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, then go for it. And the only other thing I'll say is you have to be really careful when you are injured. Even though you might not be load bearing on a bike or in the pool, you could, if you're cross training a lot, and I'm talking, more than a couple of hours a day, you could actually be slowing down your recovery, because your body needs time to sort of reabsorb everything that's gone awry with the injury. So you might be a bit depleted with your vitamins, or you might just honestly need some time to get some of your energy stores back up. And and killing yourself on the bike is only going to drag out your injury even more. So yeah, just being mindful of that and realizing that your body's actually telling you you need to rest. And if that means doing nothing, then that's okay. And like, you will come back and be okay.
I think cross training has a lot of stigma associated with the running community because people think that it's highly correlated to injury. Anyone who knows me knows I'm very lazy if I'm injured or in general. For me, I run because I want to run, and that's also what I'm somewhat good at. I don't enjoy swimming, and I don't know much about riding, so I don't do those. So for me, cross training is very much a chore because I'm exposed to it when I'm injured, unable to run, and I'm told to do water running or biking or whatever. For me, I find cross training works best when it's short, sharp, and high intensity. So like a kind of fartlek, as opposed to like people go and do 3-hour rides on the spin bike or whatever it may be. I just like to go feel like I did a really hard session, really short period, and I'm done. But I think for an individual, if you've had quite a good crack at running for a period of time, and you need to run quite a lot to train for a longer distance race, and you're finding that 60 Ks a week, you keep breaking down, you keep niggling, but you think, you need to keep that 4th or 5th day of exercise, you could replace that with a non-weight bearing activity. But I think just do it if it's something you want to do. You shouldn't have to wake up and go, oh, I'm swimming because I'm unable to run. But if someone loves swimming, like, it's a great aerobic exercise to add into your mix. But I think for most people who through here, when their training loads are not, 7, 8, 9 hours a week of running, I don't think it's super important. And like for me, it's like, I don't know how much like speed benefit or specific 1500 meter benefit I'm going to get from a swim, but you might get, some aerobic benefit from cross training. So if you want to do it, but not in excess, as Rosie said.
Yeah, and I tend to sit in the camp of trying to run more, and because I enjoy running, and I've been in situations where I've come at it from different angles, where I've been injured and I've kind of known my timeline as to when I was going to get back. So I did cross train in that period, but when there's kind of a longer period, and then I've just said, I just need to have a reset, let the body heal and rest. And I think there's a few ways you can go around it. You've got to enjoy it. Like, it's if you enjoy going for a ride and you want to incorporate that into your training and it works in with the program, that's great. But I think as you run a bit more, I think you've got to, as you get a bit more serious, you need to sort of weigh up if that's a good approach in your program, because I think it's quite specific what we do as runners. So I would sort of tend to sort of lean towards that. But yeah, you got to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think if you're increasing your Sunday long run and that was like your current focus, and your Monday is normally a rest day, I'd prioritize, the rest rather than adding, a ride or a swim, given that the running is your primary goal.
100%.
Awesome. Fantastic answers. So that's about it for the first theme of the night. So I'll now hand back over to Ellie to take over.
Thanks, Dan. Already, like, literally everything you've said has been gold. I really hope that everyone's listening. I started to like take notes of key points and then realized I was just writing down everything you all said, so it wasn't sustainable. But yeah, it's awesome. I think just, that idea of patience and trusting the process is so key. Thinking long term. Often these are lessons that you have to learn yourself, but I think for all the new runners who are listening in, just listen to it. And if you find yourself in a bit of a plateau, maybe then you can reflect on some of the things that were said tonight. And also, Isaac was saying, not everyone has a coach, which is true, but everyone can join the MUAC development squad. And then you can have Ellie and Dan as a coach. Granted, it's a very light touch coach, but it's still a coach, and you'll get introduced to like a proper warm up and doing proper sessions and all that kind of stuff. Which brings us to our next theme, which will probably be the final theme before we wrap up and do some more Q&A, which is elements of a training plan. But before we get into the kind of nitty gritty of it, I just wanted to get you all to put your coach's hat on. And we have a lot of attendees here tonight who I think they're relatively new to running, or they've been running for quite a while. They've got the consistency with it, they're running every week. They're probably running at least 2, maybe 3 to 4 times a week. But they don't have any real structure. They just kind of go out and go for a run, get their heart rate up, which is great, which is awesome, which is fantastic. But now they're wanting to take the next step and get a bit faster, maybe work on a park run PB, or just to increase their mileage and their load a bit safely. What would be your advice for the first step that this runner should take?
Getting comfortable at running at an uncomfortable speed. It sounds very silly, but shorter period, like shorter time intervals or shorter distances of running, faster than you're comfortable with. I think I see it a lot with people through work who are new to running. Zach kind of alluded to this earlier. They just kind of go and run moderately hard for 20, 30, 40 minutes. But this is like running quite hard for a shorter period of time, especially if you're aiming for something like 5K or 10K. Then say your goal pace is 4 minutes per kilometer. If you can go and run, a couple of K repetitions at 3:45, it makes 4 minutes feel easier. So I find with myself, it's like you start to know when you're feeling quite like track ready or race ready, because you can kind of just, effortlessly move along at the pace you need to run on a track.
And on top of that, like a polarized training approach. So having that real 80, I guess the 80-20 rule, where still got a lot of easy running in there. And then you are touching on those different systems that Isaac mentioned, going into some things that are faster than a race pace, potentially longer efforts that are above your goal race pace, but you're going for a bit longer. So yeah, just touching on different systems into different energy systems, and then a long run as well. So you've got that holistic week. And then as you're sort of really trying to improve, you're wanting to look at those 1%ers and looking at how you're recovering. So how you finish, finishing sessions up, how you're recovering in between sessions, getting your sleep and doing these things that can assist in making sure you recover. And I think it's just working with your coach and finding that sweet spot, because some people really thrive on doing a lot more mileage, and other people, actually a bit more speed focused. So you can actually pull the mileage back. So yeah, it is quite individual getting that sweet spot for mileage.
Yeah, and I would just say, and I think you can do this whether or not you have a coach, but just whatever is sort of your goal race is, or whatever the goal is, put a date on it. It doesn't have to be a hard date, but just a general date. And then it's helpful to work backwards from there and think, okay, how much time do I have between now and then? And kind of break it into sections. So like maybe you'll do 4 weeks of maybe more just sort of aerobic, like base building training, where you're just doing mostly easy runs. Maybe you start doing one sort of tempo run a week or something, and then you'll move into like a next phase where you might incorporate some fartleks or some hill repeats, or some shorter, quicker sort of speed oriented things. And then you'll have that last segment before your goal, where it's really just about fine tuning and doing the 1% things that Zach was talking about, and getting ready for that goal. And that can just be helpful mentally, I think, because otherwise it's like, okay, I have 12 weeks. What do I do? Like, it just can seem sort of overwhelming. And so just breaking it down sort of into these blocks and into weeks, and then even, days from there. And, nothing needs to be set in stone, like definitely do this in pencil, but it can just help mentally to put that down on paper. And I think, when you get more experience, some coaches are very structured, and there's this term periodization, and it's all very scientific, but like the basic is just having these segments where you're focusing on different things and these different systems, like Zach mentioned. And I think really, like, even if you're only running 3 or 4 days a week, it's very doable to have still have those days be quality, have like a longer run, have, a run where you're doing some faster stuff, like and maybe 2 runs that are just jogging, and you can still see some really good improvement. So just don't feel like, oh, I can only run a few days a week, so it's not sort of it's not manageable to kind of structure my training. I definitely think it is, and it will make it more enjoyable because it won't just be like Groundhog Day. I mean, I've been stuck just doing easy runs for a long time, and it's miserable. Like, I can't wait to start having some structure. So yeah, I guess that would be my main suggestion. And the other thing is experienced runners will always take time off a few times a year after a season ends. So I just think keep that in mind. Like, you know, when you've been pushing yourself pretty hard, like, you're probably going to feel good because you're really fit and you've just, you know, you're on a high because you might have just, you know, run that race you were training for. But just recognize, like, it's good to have a couple of weeks where you're just resting or really just taking it easy to let your body recoup from that.
I'm glad you brought up that last point. That was something I was going to ask about, kind of looking at the structure of your whole year, which touched on what Zaka brought up right at the beginning, I think, when, you know, you should build in recovery times to your whole year. And I think you should think about the recovery time not as time off training, but actually like a really key part of your training, because that's when you're going to, like Rosie said, recuperate and make those adaptations or whatever. We're starting to run out of time, so I think we'll finish off with reading out some of these audience questions, because we're getting some really good questions that I want to get to. And thankfully, Tessa asked one of the questions that I wanted to ask, so I can read it out in Tessa's words. Hi, Tessa. Where are you? Okay, it's relevant to what we've already been talking about. What should a week of running look like in terms of speed training, longer runs, easy runs, strength, etc., to best see improvements? So I guess what's kind of like a weekly template that you can give us that each person can then tweak to their own individual circumstance and goals, of course.
I think it's so hard because everyone is different. And it's funny, Isaac mentioned this, how in Australia we have this really weird thing where it's like people train on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays, and like Sunday's the long run and Tuesdays and Thursdays you have your sessions. It's like, no. When I was living in the US, like my college coach had us doing long runs on Wednesdays and like track sessions on Sundays. Like, really, you can structure however you want to structure it. But I think I actually like thinking about things in more of like a 9 or 10 day block. And I think that's just something I've come to terms with in the last few years with just some injuries I've had. I think that I actually do better with sort of within about 9 days, 2 really good sessions and 1 long run. I think 3 sessions a week is a bit too much intensity for me. It's a lot to do with how I run and my biomechanics, but everyone's different. But I think having that sort of 7 to 10 day framework, and then within that thinking about, okay, one of those days you'll do your longer aerobic run. One day you might try to do sort of some longer efforts. They could be, you know, a 10 to 20 minute tempo. It could be sort of a progressive run where you start out at normal pace and then sort of the second half of the run you build into like a tempo, or you could have like longer fartlek type efforts. And then another one might be you're doing just some sort of shorter things on, like, I actually during lockdown last year I really enjoyed doing speed work on an oval rather than a track. So the surface is just a lot more forgiving. So you could do like 200s or 300s and just sort of do some faster stuff. But you definitely don't need to overdo it. I think the theme of tonight has definitely been less is more. So just keep that in mind. And most of your runs should really be easy and you should feel totally relaxed. Like, I cannot stress enough how your easy day should be easy. Just really, really, I think it's hard. I've been in situations where you're running with a group and it's really easy to push the pace, but at the moment we're all running with ourselves or one other person, and so just keep the pace super conservative. You should be able to talk comfortably. You shouldn't be breathing hard, and if you're tired, just back it off. And the other thing I'll just say about like incorporating strength work, and this takes a lot of trial and error because a lot of people are different in how they respond to it, but I think there's something to, and this builds on what I just said, keep your easy days easy. And then maybe on the day that you have the hardest session, maybe after the session, or later that day, if you do it in the morning, actually that's when you could do some strength work, because then you have all your hard effort on the one day. Because sometimes you might, have your hard run and then you'll do an easy run and you'll do your strength that day and you're feeling pretty good. And then like 2 days later, the DOMS kicks in and you feel really sore, and then you try to do your next session and it just is a fail. So I think just trying to think about it that way, where you have set days where you're stressing your body and set days where you're definitely keeping it very chill, can be helpful.
Just to add to that, yeah, I guess, I'm not a big fan of templates. Like there is an individual, it's so individual, and there really is, that structure needs to be built from learning about the athlete and what their goals are, and what they really enjoy doing and what they're good at. And the other thing is, I guess I was a quick one about, like, say, mixing up your surfaces. So like even a long run, just getting out over the hills, or like allowing your body just to change surfaces and change environment is a really important one in building that structure in your week. And I think Rosie covered a lot of it off in terms of how you, and I've gone from a program where I was doing 3 sessions a week, and then I've gone now to 2. And as I've got older, I've really enjoyed the longer period between harder sessions. So like a Tuesday session and then a Friday workout. So as opposed to say Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, it wasn't sustainable for me. So yeah, a lot of it is just getting the key learnings from how you sort of respond from those sessions as well.
I think you need to work out, I guess, where you get the best bang for your buck. If you have, fewer days and you're not training 7 days a week, and simply you can't get 3 recovery runs, a long run, 3 workouts. If you don't have, your body, you don't have the training age to do that, or B, most of us don't have the time to do that. So like for me, I like doing 2 workouts a week. I find that doing 3 workouts a week, one's always well below mediocre. And then I think, oh, that was crap. I'm like, I'm not running well. And then again, you're tired, and then you feel awful the next run as well. I prefer coming out of sessions feeling good and being a little bit underdone than cooked and unhappy. Strength is an interesting one for me. I have in the past done periods of a lot of it. And when I say a lot of it, I mean like Olympic lifting, quite heavy stuff, and real kind of like power producing stuff. I suppose for a middle distance runner, the power is important at some level. But I also found it really ruined my ability to train the next day. I was doing my strength on my jogging days. So this links back to what Rosie said, because I didn't want to do them on the same day as my workout, because I'm like, that's just so much hard training on one day. But I would always be tight in the calves, which were kind of a focus area for me. And in general, just like, oh, this is just so much more time spent exercising. I like to be a bit efficient. Nowadays, strength, I still incorporate it, but it's led by a physio, and it's more so, stuff that I jump down here and do on the ground at the end of my bed, with resistance bands, med balls, and really kind of running specific. But also for me, it's specific to my areas of weakness. And over my years of learning of my injuries and my event, identifying weaknesses and ways in which you can improve them in a pretty efficient way, because that's what I wanted as an athlete. I didn't want to have to go to a gym twice a week, pay membership. I wanted to work out what can I do that's going to make hopefully a difference that I can do in 30 minutes to an hour at the end of the day on my floor. So I think it's imperative for the person, but it, if you're running 3 days a week, you're still going to get more out of a 60 to a 80-minute long run than a gym session. So it's, again, picking and choosing, and potentially you can't have everything. So work out what you want to do and work out what works for you.
That's awesome. I think it's really nice to hear that, there's obviously some fundamental principles that we can reflect on and can incorporate, but there isn't one way to do it. There's not the best way to do it. And the best way to do your training is the way that suits your lifestyle and that makes you happy. And I think there's a lot of anxiety with new runners where they're like, oh, I have to do this many sessions a week. I have to do a long run, and I have to do this, and I have to do a strength training, and I have to fit it into 7 days. And then they get exhausted and injured and think that they can't do running, but it's like, if you just chill out a little bit and, you know, think about your recovery, get those quality sessions in, but also have those easy days, then you're gonna see improvements. We're at time now. We've got to wrap up. I'm sorry that we haven't gotten through all of the wonderful questions, but thank you so much for submitting them. Before we finish, I do just want to give each of you the opportunity to say like any random thing about running that you'd like to bring in. Same with you, Dan, if there are any points you'd like to finish on before we wrap up. Or if you want to, you can have a look at the Q&A, and if there's a question that you'd really love to respond to.
I like that an anonymous attendee said rest is training. Yes,
yes, agreed. Thank you, anonymous attendee. Anonymous attendee has asked some great questions tonight.
I'm often like sitting in bed eating a lot of food and just on my rest days. I'm like, I'm training right now. Like this is what I love my 2 rest days a week.
Yeah.
I guess just a couple of points that I sort of had been thinking about before tonight, which I don't think I touched on, is if and when, more likely when you do get injured, I think it's just really important to stay engaged with your running community. And this is something I've really struggled with, because like every instinct is like, oh, this is so depressing, I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just going to shut it out. And I actually think it's the opposite, and you need to stay connected with people, because, you know, just having that, you know, we were talking about how running is such a social outlet. You need to keep those social connections alive and keep engaged, and that will help keep you motivated and sort of hopeful for the future and looking forward to when you are back out there. And the other thing is, you know, if you are struggling, I think this is so much more important now than ever with COVID and lockdowns forever, but just seek help. You know, like I recently started seeing a sports psychologist, and it was just so amazing and eye-opening, and it was like, why didn't I do this sooner? So, you know, whether it's a sports psych or a normal psych, or even just leaning on your friends and family, I think just really seek out those resources. And you know, being injured is really, really hard, and I think right now is actually the hardest time to be injured, because all the gyms are closed and the pools are closed, and all you can do is just go for a walk, unless like you get a bike at home or something. It's just so hard. And then like, even for people who are healthy, there's no races. And so, or at least not, you know, imminently. And so, yeah, I think just really being mindful of when you need support and acting on it.
Yeah, it's a great message, Rosie. And I think, yeah, we've just got to be, you know, not so hard on ourselves when we're not feeling like, if you don't feel like running the day, take the day off. Don't push it, don't force it. And one day off, and if there's potential on that day, you're going to get injured because, you know, your body is run down and you just push it over the edge. And then you'd rather have one day off than 3 weeks off or 4 weeks or longer. So, and it's the same with the session. You might warm up and you might not just feel it, and then you just pull it and run easy. That could just be the day that you just take off, and it saves you from being injured. So I think that's really important to really learn and listen to your body and go easy on yourself as well. And it comes back even when you're easy running pace. Like don't go down Strava and compare yourself to other people, and just go and run. And I think when you run easy, like use clock face and don't even look at the K, and just do your easy runs easy, and then enjoy doing the sessions to your best of your ability.
Yeah, find a running buddy that you can talk politics or life stress about, and then you know you're running easy enough because you can chat. Yeah. But as long as it's a two-way street, not one person is talking, the other person can't breathe.
Dan, did you have any last points you wanted to raise before we wrap up?
I think everything's been raised and answered pretty well by everyone here, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you all so much. Isaac, Rosie and Zaka, it's been awesome to listen to you speak. I've learned a lot. I'm really glad that the recording of this webinar is going to be super valuable and not embarrassing of me and Dan awkwardly asking questions. It's gone really well. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. It's nice to see, especially some development squad names in the list. I miss you all, and we wish that we were training together, and hopefully we will be again soon. Thank you to Greg as well. He's in the background being the tech guy. Yeah, that's it. See you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
See you, everyone.
Bye. Greg, I think you have to press end.